Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Kovacs here, and for Erev Shabbos Vayakhel. Mishnah Yomi is in chapter 2 of Eduyot, Testimonies, Mishnayot 4 and 5. Shlosha Devarim Amar Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said three things, Lifnei Chochamim Bekerem B'Yavneh, in front of the sages in the Kerem B'Yavneh. Now, Kerem usually means a vineyard. It means the big yeshiva that they set up in Yavneh immediately after the Churban. Though there's a diuk in the Gemara and Gittin, they probably was a yeshiva there already, but the sages went there and established that as the main yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael right after the destruction of the temple. And Kerem, vineyard, it was called because the Talmidim were sitting in rows, like the vines in the vineyard. So what did Rabbi Yishmael say? He said, Al beitza trufa, a mixed up egg. The egg has been beaten to mix the white and the yolk, and then cooked. Shehi netuna al gabei yerek. It's being cooked on top of vegetables, shel truma. So the vegetables are truma, and the egg is not. Shehi chibor. When they're cooked together like this, and the egg has been whipped first, it's considered chibor, like they're connected. So now, if a tzivul yom, somebody who had tuma, and then went to the mikveh, and they're waiting for sunset to be pure again, enough to eat truma, if they touch the egg on top, it's considered connected to the vegetables underneath, and those truma vegetables are now invalidated and cannot be eaten. But if the egg on top is just like a hat, it's not really mixed in and connected, maybe the egg wasn't beaten, or maybe it was pre-cooked somewhere else in a different kli, so it's like on top but not really connected so well, eina chibur, then it's not a real halachic connection, and if a teful yom touches it, it doesn't mess up the truma underneath as long as he didn't touch the truma. Now the second halacha he said was al shibolet, one stalk of grain, shebekatzir, that during the harvest it was left. So the harvesters go down row by row, and in this row they accidentally left one stalk of grain. Now normally this would be what's called shicha, grain that's been forgotten and that's left for the aniyim, for the poor to come and take. But here, v'rosha magia l'kama, but the top of this forgotten single stalk is bending over to the stalks that have not yet been harvested, that are about to be harvested. So what do we do? Im niktsara imakama, if the forgotten single stalk could be harvested in one swipe of the sickle with the other standing grain that they're harvesting right now, harehi shel balabayit, it belongs to the owner of the field. V'im lav, but if it's kind of a distance, harehi shel aniyim, then it's really shecha, it belongs to the poor people. Now the third item, the algina ketana, a small garden, shehi mukefet aris. It's surrounded by a trellis, and this trellis has 5 grapevines. It's interesting, aris is also the word for a sharecropper who helps people to grow their field and their property, and it's also the word for a trellis that helps the vines to grow in the vineyard. So this is a small garden. Im yesh bo kimlo botzer, if there's enough space inside for the grape picker, Visolu, and also his basket that he puts the grapes into, mikan, from one side, umalo botzer visalo mikan, and also the same area, the same space to the other side, tizorea. Then in the middle of this garden, you could actually plant wheat. Now the concern is kilai hakerem, wheat may not be planted within 4 amot of an actual vineyard. However, if these trellis, you understand there's 4 walls of trellis around this small garden, if there's enough space in the middle, which equivalates to 4 amas of space, then these vines on the sides of the garden, they're not really considered a vineyard. They're considered 5 separate vines that happen to be on a trellis that happens to be around a garden, but there's enough space in between them that it's not halachically a real vineyard. We talked all about this in Kilayim. B'imlav, and if there's not enough space in the middle, lo tizorea, it can't be planted at all with wheat in the middle of the trellises. Now on to Mishnah Hey. Shlosha devarim amar lifnei Rabbi Yishmael. They said 3 halachic discussions in front of Rabbi Yishmael. V'lo amar behem. Rabbi Yishmael did not give a categorical answer. Lo iser, lo heter. He didn't say it's right or wrong in all cases, because we'll see it depends. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Matya, Rabbi Yeshua is able to explain that it does depend on the external factors. For example, the first one, Hamefis Mursa b'Shabbat. Somebody opens up a boil or a pus-filled blister on Shabbos. So it depends on his intention. Im lasot la peh chayav. If he's trying to create an opening in his skin, he's liable for breaking Shabbos. If he's trying to get the pus out because he's experiencing pain from the pressure of the pus, he's not interested in a permanent opening of the blister, he just wants to drain some liquid, pater. He is not liable. The Barnura says it be considered a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, an act of labor that's not necessary for its purpose. He's not doing it for the defined purpose. And the second one, olatzod nachash b'Shabbat, somebody traps a snake on Shabbos. Im mitasek shelo yishchenu, if his intention is just to keep the snake away from his foot so he doesn't get bit, pater. Doesn't need the snake, he just needs to not be bit by the snake. He has not violated Shabbos at all. Im l'refua chayiv, if he's keeping the snake for some sort of medicinal purposes, and this hints that perhaps they knew that there was a way to make anti-venom using the venom or the secretions inside the snake, chayiv, then that's a constructive purpose for trapping the snake, and he's broken Shabbos. Finally, the third one, alefosin ironiot. These round, ball-shaped pots made by villagers. Now, what they were actually doing was making basically a hollow ball of clay, a ceramic pot, but then they would later cut it in half and have two pots or two bowls made from the one form they made originally, sort of the round ball form. Rabbi Yishmael said, Shehem tahorot be'ohel hamet. They remain pure if they are under the same roof as a dead body. We talked about tumat ohel at the very last Mishnah in chapter 1. Utmeot b'masa zav, but they do become tamei if they are picked up or moved by a zav. A zav is a man who had certain emissions that render his body impure, and he's able to transmit that simply by moving and carrying items. So because it's like a closed ball that's not yet separated into two separate vessels, it's not contaminated through tumas ohel from being under the same roof or covering as a dead body. But if a zav carries it, it doesn't have to be closed off. It can still become contaminated. But Rabbi Elazar ben Sadok Omeri disagrees. He says, "Af b'masa zav torah." He says they also don't become contaminated through a zav moving them. B'bnei shelo nimar melochtan. Not because they'd be immune, but because it's not a finished kli yet. It's not the finished product until they take this hollow ball and actually cut it into two separate open vessels. Yishar kochachem. Good Shabbos. Zay gezut.